All right, Zach. I'm ready to hit our take for 99. And Zach, I'll give you the mic to kick us off. We give an expensive take for a cheap price. Anything that we haven't got to cover, or anything that we did cover that we want to expand upon, the mic is yours.
Yes, Will. So we were talking a little bit about this before the show, actually. It's July. There isn't a ton of news going on right now, especially in the NFL. Training camp hasn't started yet. These players are on summer vacation. The news cycle will get popping before we know it. But there was actually a piece of news that dropped today that I thought was rather significant that I wanted to talk about. And that's the fact that the Buccaneers, they're starting left tackle, Tristan Wirfs, he actually underwent surgery on his right knee, which currently puts him on the PUP list. And it's looking likely that he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season, maybe more. And I think that is a huge blow to this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. And I think it could really open up the NFC South. Like, that division all of a sudden could be a little bit more up for grabs than people realize. Look, this guy has a legitimate argument for being the best left tackle in the game. That's how good he is. He is an impact player. And Baker Mayfield is a guy that neither of us had ranked yet. He's obviously a very good quarterback, had a great year. But he's another guy for me, similar to Bo Nix. Like, if he's without Tristan Wirfs, I think that could do some real damage to this Buccaneers team and to him. As great of a season as he had last year, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that again if Wirfs isn't out there. And I think the Buccaneers are an organization that deserves the benefit of the doubt. Anyone who's listened to this show long enough knows that both of us are huge fans of Jason Light, his ability to find and develop talent. However, this team now has won the division for how many years in a row? It's been 5 or 6, even dating back to the Tom Brady era.
Yeah, I believe. If I had to guess it, I would say 5. I believe 6.
Yeah. So it's been a long time. And as great of a season as last year was, it ended in disappointment. They went one and done, losing to the Washington Commanders in the playoffs. And I also feel like, obviously, we spoke about Liam Cohen already on this show. He's a huge loss. Now you're without Tristan Wirfs. Chris Godwin is coming back from a major injury. I like the draft pick of Emeka Egbuka, but those are big shoes to fill. I just feel like this division has gotten a little bit more wide open. And anyone who's been paying attention to our list, there is one quarterback in the NFC South that I'm a lot higher on than others that I think could be in for a breakout season. I think his team could be in for a breakout season as well. I don't want to spoil anything, but that's all I'm going to say. I think this Wirfs injury is something to monitor, and this division could be more wide open than people realize. And that is my take for 99.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you lose an offensive lineman, it really changes the outlook of your team. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Obviously, we talk about quarterbacks. Quarterbacks is always going to get the love when we talk about the sport. And obviously wide receivers and stuff like that. But I think one of the more underrated things is the offensive line. Once you see them offensive linemen start dropping, that definitely alters your offense. So if he is going to miss time, that's a big loss for the Buccaneers. Now, the question would be, do they have the depth to replace, Tristan Wirfs? Do they have the talent to be able to, overcome that? Clearly, they do have the talent to overcome that. But anytime you lose production because he's unavailable from a guy that immediately, since he was drafted, was literally started. I believe this first year he only gave up 1 sack, and that was against Khalil Mack. That was his rookie year. He only gave up 1 sack on Tom Brady against Khalil Mack. I mean, come on, it's Khalil Mack, obviously. Anytime you had a guy that has been drafted and has been the model of consistency since he's been drafted at the left tackle spot, that's always going to be a big loss. So we'll see if that impacts Baker Mayfield's play and the offense play. Obviously, we still have him yet to be ranked, so we are still semi-high on Baker Mayfield production, that is. You may be less high on the team overall. I do think the NFC South is going to be a much better division compared to the last couple years, and I do think they're a deeper competition outside of the Saints. The Saints are obviously going to be the worst team in football, but you look at the Falcons. I think the Falcons are some big players. That's why I had Michael Penix high compared to where you have him. I do think the Panthers are a team that you could watch out for. Obviously, you're higher on Bryce Young than I am, but I do think Bryce Young was the most improved quarterback in football last year for what it's worth, and clearly you view the same. So, yeah, that's a big loss. And Zach, I'm going to go ahead with my take for 99. I'm going to jump back into the sport of the NBA. I'm going to hit on something that we didn't cover, but we kind of hit upon the wide open East when we talked about the Knicks and the pressure. But I want to go with this topic. Donovan Mitchell is under the most pressure to win the NBA Finals next season individually. And everybody's talking about how wide open the East is, including myself. Obviously, with the injuries to Tyrese Halliburton, with Jason Tatum and Dame all likely out for next season. Obviously, with my last take for 99 a couple shows ago, I talked about the pressure of the Knicks as a basketball team and the hiring process and how that coach will have to endure. We all know it's Mike Brown now. I did it at the time. Is going to have to endure the pressure of finals or bust aspirations. However, if I had to go in a direction of a player individually, it's Donovan Mitchell. And we all know Donovan Mitchell is a dynamic scorer, a gifted athlete. But when it comes to clutch playoff moments to get his team over the hump, he cannot get his team over the hump. He hasn't gotten out the second round, dare I remind folks, of the playoffs in his career, despite going 64-18 in the regular season last season. His pair, Caldwell Pope, came out on a podcast and took a jab at Donovan Mitchell and Tyrese Halliburton's credentials, saying that superstars can win me games. Caldwell Pope said, can he do that consistently every night? Go out there and try to win me a game. We're talking about superstars, though. We're talking about getting teams involved. We're talking about getting players involved. Going out there saying, when my team needs me to win, I'm going to get this team to win. I can't do that with Donovan Mitchell, and I quote Caldwell Pope. So, he also said that Halliburton was more of a 50-50 because he doesn't show up consistently, which I agree. But the reality is, Halliburton sent Mitchell home. The reality is, Halliburton had those playoff, I take and carry my team and winning the fourth quarter over Donovan Mitchell. He had the better fourth quarter moments over Donovan Mitchell. Dare I say, dare I remind y'all, Jalen Brunson outperformed and outplayed Donovan Mitchell twice when he was on the Mavericks, when Luka Doncic got hurt for the first 2 or 3 games, when he was on the Knicks, he outperformed Donovan Mitchell. So, folks, Rudy Gobert is not coming through that door to get the blame put on him for why Donovan Mitchell cannot get out the second round. He's not walking through that door, folks. Okay? Rudy Gobert is not walking through that door to blame him for catching COVID. Okay? It's not happening. Donovan Mitchell, if you are that dude, if you are a superstar, you need to deliver. Just like my Knicks. Yeah, we are under pressure to come out the East. Make no mistake about that. But Donovan Mitchell, you individually are under the most pressure in a wide open Eastern Conference to come out the East. And guess what, buddy? We have zero excuses to do so. And that's my take for 99.
That's an interesting one. I'd love to get into this. So I definitely agree. There is a ton of pressure on Donovan Mitchell. As much pressure as there is on the Knicks as a team, I would say there's equally an amount of pressure on Mitchell. I'm fascinated by his career, though, because if you look at Donovan Mitchell's playoff numbers, there's nothing about him that says he's a choker, right? This is a guy that's averaged 28 points per game in the playoffs in his career. He's averaged 5 rebounds, almost 5 assists. And this is a guy that his rookie year, people forget this, this guy is a rookie, went toe-to-toe with Russell Westbrook and Paul George and knocked them out of the playoffs in 5 games, I believe. That was an impressive series win by Utah.
And he had the infamous bubble playoff matchup against Jamal Murray.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like, Utah was up 3-1 in that series, and they lost, which isn't a great look. The next year, the Jazz were the 1 seed, and they lost in the conference semifinals to the Clippers. Rudy Gobert got played off the floor in that one.
And then Luka Doncic gets hurt. Yeah. Misses 2-3 games, you know.
That one, I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy, but I thought that Jazz team was dead on arrival. It was obvious that Donovan had no interest in signing with Utah long term. But you bring up that Knicks series the following year. That's not a great look. I guess the point I'm trying to say here, Will, is I agree there's pressure. I don't view Mitchell as a guy that's incapable of getting his team over the hump. The bigger question I have with the Cavaliers is this. Is the way their team currently constructed, is it going to work? Because they have a team on paper that's very talented. Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. I think those are 2 building blocks, 2 guys that I think are good enough to be a 1-2 duo on a championship team. I think both those guys are that good. I think Darius Garland is super talented. However, he's a small guard. And if you have two small guards, is that something that wins in the playoffs? I'm not sure, but it's not proven that it could work. Jared Allen, another talented player, but is he a guy you want to play with? Evan Mobley, two bigs. And it all comes down to this. That Pacers series was a bad look by Cleveland. They were the 1 seed. They had home court advantage, and they didn't only lose, but they lost in 5 games, and it was an embarrassing fashion. They choked 2 games away, and in game 4 in Indiana, after a nice game 3 win, they didn't even get off the bus. That was that's I believe the biggest blowout in NBA playoff history of recent memory. The Pacers stomped them in the locker in that game. The question for Cleveland is, are you just going to blame the injuries? Evan Mobley was banged up. Darius Garland was banged up. DeAndre Hunter, their big trade deadline acquisition, he was banged up. Are you just going to blame the injuries for that series and say, okay, we're going to run this thing back in a wide open East and we think we're going to get there next year? Or should this team make a move? And I don't really know what that move is. The offseason, the brunt of it is already past. Free agency is already in the rearview mirror. I'm not really sure. I don't really know who my target would be for this team. But what I do know is I don't know if you could win a championship the way they're currently constructed. I really don't view Donovan Mitchell as a guy that's incapable of getting his team over the hump. I actually think he's one of the best playoff players in the league, and I do view him as a guy that I'd want to ride with in a big game any day. I think he's that good. However, I don't know if the way this team is built is good enough, and obviously the LeBron James rumors, they're another team that applies to. Would LeBron want to come home? Based on all the second apron rules, from what I understand, that would be a pretty difficult move for them to make. I just don't really know if you want to shake it up, what's the guy they should go after. So I guess for that instance, you run it back. But I'm not really confident. I would put them in the same category as the Knicks, honestly. Like, I have my doubts about Cleveland as well. I don't think it's some guarantee they're getting to the finals, but it's not because of Donovan Mitchell. It's because of the way this team is constructed. And my last point on this, the one move they made this offseason that I really like is trading for Lonzo Ball from the Bulls for Isaac Okoro. I think as long as Lonzo can stay healthy, he could be one of the better backup point guards in the league. And I wonder if he could be a guy as a bigger point guard, I should say. I think he fits nicely off the bench with Garland and Mitchell as a bigger guard. He's just got to stay healthy. Obviously, that's a huge concern, but I think letting him go and letting Ty Jerome walk for big money was the correct move. So I'll salute them for that.
Yeah, this team won 64 games in the regular season last year. They're very well coached. Kenny Atkinson is a very good coach. He proved that last year. Won Coach of the Year last year, deservedly so. I'm expecting this team in a wide open Eastern Conference to win. You know, I'm not really going to buy the excuses about the roster. Clearly, they can play together. They won 64 games. Do we want Evan Mobley to be a little bit more aggressive on the offensive end? Sure. I think we could use that. Jared Allen, is he a championship caliber player? Clearly not. But, you still have Evan Mobley on the floor. Donovan Mitchell comes down to, because I just don't think we could continue making excuses. Sure, you brought up the numbers, and sure, statistically, he's not a bad player or performer, right? You can't look at his stats and be like, well, he was a no-show. However, he hasn't got the job done. And he's been in the East, he's been in the West, he's been in number 1 seed, favorite, lead 3-1. I mean, we cannot continue, blaming exterior. At the end of the day, if you're going to be the superstar, and that's why Caldwell Pope in the podcast said he's not a superstar, and I guess that's why you don't blame him. But if you want to take that next leap of being a superstar, right, where you take everything, the good and the bad, you could be blamed for your team's success or lack thereof because you are the superstar. If you want to take that next leap to be able to be put in position where we can blame you because we expect more from you, then you have to do it. You have to become that. And the Eastern Conference is wide open. There's no Pacers. There's the Bucs may be the biggest threat. I mean, come on. The Knicks, obviously, we are a flawed roster. So, yeah, we could say what we want about Cleveland roster, but the Knicks roster is not perfect by any means. And I think it's going to be Knicks and Cavaliers ultimately. So, if they come out and give us another good regular season similar to next year, hell, if they just only done 1 seed, if they done 1 seed in the Eastern Conference that's wide open next year, I expect them to come out. And Donovan Mitchell will be the reason why they do or don't.
Yeah, I agree in the sense that the Knicks and Cavs are in the exact same category. I think there's a decent chance that these two teams.
I hope so. I'm a Knicks fan, obviously. I think we will. I think we better than Cleveland because I just don't trust Cleveland in the playoffs. That's my point exactly. I do not trust Cleveland. So I do think the Knicks will come out of the Eastern Conference, but we'll see what happens.
And that's why I would put the Knicks and the Cavs in the exact same category. I mean, these two teams could win 60 games each next year. They could be the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the regular season. It doesn't matter. It means nothing because they have to prove they could win in the playoffs. And that's the thing about the Eastern Conference. We've had our conversations on this show. Many other shows have had it. The NBA regular season, it's never been more meaningless. You could win 64 games like this Cavs team just did and fall short in the playoffs. It won't matter. I would put the Knicks into that same category. You got to show up when it matters most.
And my last point exactly is, look, the one common thread here is that the Pacers sent both of us home. Okay, the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton and company sent us home. And look, say what you want about Tyrese Halliburton and his inconsistency from game to game. Sometimes he shows up in the scoring department. Sometimes he affects the game as a playmaker. He had moments in both of those series. Obviously, the game 1 against the Knicks. Obviously, a couple games on the road against the Cavaliers. Guess what? He's not here. He's going to be out next year. Guess what? Tatum is going to be out next year. Guess what? Dame is going to be out next year. These two teams have no excuses. That's why I think the Knicks have a lot of pressure, being that they fired their head coach and replacing him with Mike Brown. There's a lot of pressure from a team perspective. But individually, right? Individually, I think Donovan Mitchell has the most pressure on him because, number one, he hasn't got out of the second round. That's a big thing. Jalen Brunson got out of the second round. Okay, all these other guys. Giannis won a championship. I mean, we want to go down the list here against the East. All right, look at the East. Obviously, we don't expect nothing from Joel Embiid no more. I mean, he's a myth in the NBA. The guy never on the court. So that leaves us with Donovan Mitchell. What is your credentials? Oh, you haven't made it out the second round? I think you should do that this year. And that's my take. And let's peep this comment here before we leave. They sent us home with this style of play. I believe they sent us home because Tom Thibodeau got out coached. Me personally, I thought he waited too late to go deeper into his rotations. And obviously that game 1 had a lot to do with why we lost that series. Yeah, I agree with that. Tibbs couldn't adjust, and hopefully Mike Brown will be the guy that makes the adjustments.
I just want to say this. Rick Carlisle outcoached Kenny Atkinson, too. A guy you just called a really good coach. Like, did Kenny Atkinson get fired? No. So, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But, I think Kenny Atkinson is arguably a better coach than Thibodeau. I mean, they both was highly discussed, before Thibodeau got the job in New York. Kenny Atkinson was definitely an option. So, clearly they both were good coaches. But, look. Here we are. Again, pressure for the Cavs and pressure for the Knicks, and we're going to end it there. And Zach, I'm looking forward to the next show that we do. It was a good, successful show. Thanks for everybody that was tuning in. And Zach, as always, I'm looking forward to the next show that we do, my guy.
Absolutely.